Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for tuning in. It's great to be here as always. You're watching the VSO Gun Channel, and today's video is actually being filmed on 6/14 at about midday. I had some conversations yesterday, and I'm preemptively filming this video for release when sort of the embargo is lifted, so to speak. But because of the tactical strategery involved in the congressional fight related to the big, beautiful bill, we obviously don't want to release this information prematurely to tip our hands, so to speak. But when it comes to the big, beautiful bill and what you and I are concerned about, which is the Hearing Protection Act and the Short Act, you know, we've been doing a lot of pushing lately to make sure that those provisions are included and included in the proper way. What I would like to tell you now is go ahead and take a moment and pat yourself on the back because, ladies and gentlemen, we got it, and we got it all. Now, I know that some of you really like to see this stuff kind of like all laid out in type, and for that purpose, I have linked below my friend John Crump over at Ammo Land. He has a write-up if you want to get it in text form, if you're one of those people. So there it is for you. Today's video is brought to you by XS Sights. I'm out here today preaching the good word of the XS Big Dot sight. If you don't like the XS Big Dot sight, then you're wrong. No, I'm just kidding. I started using the big dots because I took a low light force on force class. If you've never had that experience, I could totally see why somebody wouldn't select that site, but it is my go-to site. They offer a whole bunch of other things out there, and XS has been a big time, long time supporter of the channel. So I very much appreciate them supporting the mission here at the VSO Gun Channel. Now, what Provision 3 of the Hearing Protection Act does is ensure that in situations like mine in the state of Ohio, the state of Ohio relies very heavily on federal law to say what is or is not cool. Basically, to sum it up for you, it basically says you're good to do this stuff as long as you follow their rules, is basically how the state of Ohio handles NFA stuff. So with those regulations potentially going away, the question is, well, what happens here to folks that want to potentially purchase suppressors and short barrel rifles? Is there a legal avenue for them to do so? And depending on how your opinion breaks or what attorney you're talking to or what their political persuasion is, they might say, no, you can't do it because there's no federal law. And then the other ones might say, well, you can comply with the federal law because there is none. Right? Like there is no more regulation on that. So you follow the existing process. And that is something that will have to be ultimately worked out by the ATF. They'll have to come out with some kind of guidance for FFLs to handle that sort of stuff. Remember, when we're talking about the suppressors, we're talking about taking them from a Title II status to a Title I status. So there will still be a NICS background check, but the whole background check process will be streamlined, and there won't be a redundant background check being done, and all the additional paperwork and tax will go away. It'll be just like you're purchasing a handgun at every gun store that already exists. Currently, we don't know what that process is going to look like. My assumption is that they're just going to reformat the 4473, put another checkbox next to other for suppressor, but you know, we are talking about government here. I have no idea what it's going to look like, and I'm assuming whatever it is going to make sure that I have to throw away the big stack of 4473s that I have unused over there. Whatever. Right? That if the text stayed the same, as in speaking as of yesterday, that there was going to be a flurry of activity running in both directions. Either the states that had holes were going to say, hey, we got to clog that hole before this becomes a problem for our citizens, or the ones that slanted a little bit less freedom oriented would say, hey, we got to close this hole so to keep people from getting these things. On top of that, we have the same treatment of the Short Act. So the text of the Short Act has also been rolled into the big, beautiful bill, meaning that those items will also be taken out of Title II, which means that they will no longer be an NFA and a GCA item. They will be only a GCA item. So the short barrel rifles will be treated just like a normal rifle. And remember, and for those of you who are sort of new here or haven't heard this before, Remember that the original target of the National Firearms Act was machine guns and handguns. And the last minute, Congress lacked the political will to ban handguns, and they decided for this regulatory scheme that would impose a tax on stuff for the purposes of curtailing the acquisition of particular items. And they decided that a tax on handguns was going to get them kicked out of office, or at least would make the rapid challenge of their proposed tax scheme a likely scenario. So they basically decided they weren't going to do handguns, and they just created this sort of like limbo class, a limbo class of short-barreled whatever that the government ended up violating on a couple occasions, and that ultimately ended up with the current regulations that we have today. And that's a story for another day. But basically, they've moved the goalpost a couple times because the government has messed up. And remember, the House always wins. So if you mess up and put the wrong piece of plastic on your weapon, then that's 10 years in prison and $250,000 fine. But if the government messes up, it's like, oops, our bad. The only thing left on the National Firearms Act will be machine guns and destructive devices, because also AOWs will come out of that as well. So for those of you who don't know what an AOW is any other weapon, and it's kind of like a catch-all. My favorite AOW probably is the MP5K with the grip, the front grip. So it's would normally be considered a pistol, but because it has a forward grip on it, it's an AOW. And of course, size constraints on that one too. It's a very strange class, but it's not a machine gun. It's not got a stock on it, so it's not a short barrel rifle. So it's kind of like, again, another limbo class inside of a limbo class that they're just like, we don't know what to call any of this stuff. And so the short barrel rifles, short barrel shotguns, and AOWs will come off of the National Firearms Act registry, treating them just like every other firearm that's out there. They aren't any more concealable. We've done a full video on the difference between a pistol and a short barrel rifle, or a handgun and a short barrel rifle, and kind of like what the difference is in today's market. And it's absolutely ridiculous that we are treating them this way, as well as, to put it bluntly, denying the most effective self-defense tools from the people in our society that need them the most, which are people that are like, hey, I've got a problem. Somebody might literally be trying to come get me, and that's why I'm interested in weapons to defend myself. Because for those of us that are kind of like into this sort of stuff, we already have that sort of stuff, and we've already been going through the process of getting them. But for like a soccer mom that's got a stalker to figure out how to jump through all those regulatory hoops and then effectuate that before it becomes a precipitous problem is highly unlikely. That person is probably going to walk into a local shop and be like, I need help. 9 months later, help is not going to do the trick. It needs to be that afternoon type thing. So bringing these regulations into balance with the modern market and modern threats that we are faced, particularly for disadvantaged communities, women, and the infirm, I think is the only logical place to go after this. And everything else is emotional bullshit that's being fed to you because the people that want power over you feel that power slipping away. So that is the current state of affairs, folks. And what that means for you is that you got to double those efforts. You need to continue to hammer this home, that you are paying attention to what is going on, and that you, for a change, approve of what is going on, and you need to make sure that the people who are in there understand the status quo, where we are at and where we want to go, because they're going to try to get this done before July 4th. And that means that we've got a couple weeks of hard press. Now, I understand that there are a lot of us out there that are very black-pilled on the whole government thing. and the whole process, and I understand where you're coming from. However, at this juncture, anybody who is out there pushing a narrative that this can't get done, or that it's not going to make any difference, or that, that you should just not waste your energy or something like that, I call 100% bullshit on those people. And at this point in time, I'm willing to go full hereticus, like exterminatus status on those people, because in my opinion, at this juncture, having demonstrated that this can be done, that we can absolutely, through public outcry and activism, mold this in the direction that we want it to go, and we are literally inches from getting it over the line. I know sports reference, gross, right? Those people should be considered opposition at this point in time. They are part of the status quo apparatus that wants to maintain the current structure, and you should stop listening to them, and they should be excised from our community at this point in time. Anyway, that's all I got for you guys today. I'm running a little bit long. Thanks for tuning in to the VSO Gun Channel, and hopefully we'll see another one here pretty soon.